Hi, I'm Dawn Cameron Dick, a patchwork and quilting teacher who lives in the southwest of England, and I'd like to talk to you today about needles. Exciting, isn't it? I just love the fact that needles can make such a fantastic impact on your sewing experience. This little needle, or maybe not so little, has so many features built into it that can help make your sewing experience just that little bit better. You don't want broken threads, skip stitches, problems that you wonder why is this happening, when knowing and understanding your needle can actually help all of those problems disappear. When you are choosing your needle, there are only a few things you need to consider. One of them is what type of needle do you need? And when you look at your package of sewing machine needles, on that package it should say who made the needles. If they made a good product, they're going to want to tell you they made it. Underneath that, it should say the type of needle, which is probably going to be a word, something like universal or sharp or denim jeans. Then it should tell you the size that those needles will come in. They will have numbers going from a small size to a large size, and you choose that needle based on the thickness of your thread. Let's look into each one of those things a little bit more in depth. Now, if you're wondering what type of needle will fit your particular sewing machine, you don't need to buy branded needles. All you need to do is be sure that on the package it says this little number, 130/705. That means that the needle you have was made for a domestic sewing machine made since probably the beginning of the Second World War. I think even though I collect some older machines, none of mine are much older than that. This is a rounded top, flat back needle, and it will fit your domestic sewing machine. The next thing you'll probably look at is type, and it's always a word. That word may be something like universal, ballpoint, sharp, quilting, or denim jeans. The Schmetz Company makes many different types of needles, and the names tell you something about the point on that needle. A universal needle is meant for wovens and knits, a ballpoint is just for knit, and sharp quilting and denim jeans needles are perfect for our woven fabrics. So they would probably be your first choice. If you're doing something with decorative fabric or decorative threads, you might look at an embroidery needle or a metallic or a top stitch. If you're working with an embroidery machine, titanium needles are a good choice because they sew for over 500 hours without changing, whereas our domestic needles mostly need to be changed every 8 hours of piercing fabric time. There's lots and lots of choices for you to help you make your sewing experience perfect. Now, once you've chosen the type of needle, you're going to want to choose your size. And the size is very simple. If you have a small numbered needle, say a 60, it's going to be for fine threads. If you have thicker, heavier threads, you'll go to a larger number. Your 80-12 is probably the average size needle for most construction in patchwork and quilting, because many of us use a 50 weight cotton, and that sits really nice and snug in an 80-12 needle. If the needle is too small, it's going to not make a large enough hole for the thread. If it's too big, the thread will wander around in that hole, and quite possibly your bobbin threads will come up. The 80 and 12 is the same number. 80 is the metric, and the 12 is the imperial sizing. So, when you go into a shop and you look at this fantastic assortment that you can have of needles, and sometimes there are 5, 10, 20 times this number of needles, how are you going to choose? First and foremost, let's assume you're sewing with cottons. You have a fine cotton, maybe a 60 weight cotton. I would suggest that you look at a 70-10 Microtex Sharp or a denim jeans. So when you're piecing or quilting with that fine thread, you will have just the right needle in there and probably reduce most of your problems when it comes to tension. Now, what if you're sewing with a 50 weight cotton? Many people are. It's a common size. I would then suggest that you go to a slightly larger needle, an 80-12. Again, still a sharp or a denim jeans, and piecing with that needle or quilting is absolutely a wonderful choice. Now, today there are so many exciting heavier weight threads out there, and if you are going to a heavier weight thread, might I suggest a 90-14, and perhaps a top stitch so that we can see those lovely threads. Metallics are quite happy in a 90-14 for your quilting, piecing, or decorative stitching. Now, I know I've given you a lot of information here in a very small amount of time, but the information is out there. And once you understand it, you will find that you have a much happier sewing experience. I have recently written a little resource book called The Pocket Tutor. It's an essential guide to patchwork and quilting. I'm afraid there's no pretty pictures of quilts in here. There aren't instructions. All this is a little manual that you can keep in your sewing box, take to workshops with you, and anytime you have questions, you can simply look to the correct tab and look at needles, threads, machines, waddings. Go to that section and answer your questions. We were just talking about needles. Sharp needles, for example, if you had forgotten that they were the sharpest point available and maybe a good choice for piecing with a fine thread in a 70-10 size, you can go to that page, read about the needle. If you're still a little confused, there are charts all through the book that talk about the right size and the right needle. There's not generally right or wrong answers. There are just better choices for you to choose with the threads you're using. If you'd like to have a look at the Pocket Tutor, please come and visit me on my website, which is www.dawncamerondick.com. Also, the books and the needles are available from a wonderful company out in the southwest of England called Quilt Direct, and they are www.quiltdirect.com. Hope we see you at the site soon, and thank you for listening to my talk on needles. Thank you. Bye.